2.03. I can multiply rational numbers. Okay, so it's really helpful to have our rules memorized. Remember that we have a positive times a positive is a positive, a negative times a negative is a positive times a negative is a negative, and the same rules apply for division. So we can memorize those rules, or we can think about what's conceptually happening here. This is 8 groups of -2. Well, if I have -2, -2, -2, -2, 8 times, my answer is going to stay negative. Or you can just remember that a positive times a negative is a negative. Number 9 here, I'm removing 4 groups of -3, which is like removing 4 groups of 3 sandbags. Well, if you remove sandbags, you go up. So that's why negative times a negative is going to give me a positive 12. Okay. Now this one's tricky because we have 3 numbers. So let's do this first one, -2 times a -3. That's a positive 6, negative times a negative. And now we have to multiply it by a -4. So I have a positive times a negative is a -24. Okay. Now this one here, same thing. I have 8 times a -1. That's going to be a -8. And then we're going to multiply that by -3. So now I have a negative times a negative is a positive 24. Okay, memorize those rules, or you can think through the problems, but at some point you want to have those rules memorized.